Welcome back, everyone, to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. I'm your host, Mind Body Medium Kara Lovehart. And so, those of you out there who have ever watched or read the book or watched the movie The Secret, one of the not the originals, but one of the rebrands of Law of Attraction manifestation from generations of this being something that has been talked about in the spiritual world. That was in 2006. And so it's been a long time. And every time I hear someone out there talking about the law of attraction or the secret to manifestation, I get really excited because it's something that's been in my world for a long time. And I know that along the way, there are little things that people learn as they go about the myths or the misconceptions. And then we have people like my guest today. This is David Strickel coming on, who have worked with, and actually this is a cool story. We're going to introduce him and learn more about how he created this particular method, which is the Taya practice. It is a paradigm shifting belief system that dismantles the high vibe dogma, which you guys know that I have a huge beef with that, and shows you how to use low vibration or challenges to work with creating and manifesting in your life. So this is something that we're really excited to talk about because you guys know I have no BS for when it comes to the bypassing and the spiritual love and light. Let's hide in the light because everything's scary kind of way of being, because that's not what we want to do when we're here on the planet. We're here to grow and evolve. And so if you're interested in manifestation, law of attraction, and if you're interested in using these methods that we're going to talk about today, please make sure you check the show notes because we're going to be putting all the information for David's options and to connect with him on his website, his social medias in the show notes. So let's bring him on and learn about how he channeled and downloaded this method. Hi, David. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
First, tell me a little bit about yourself as a background, because I didn't get a lot of that before the show. I wanted to know a little bit more about how you got into this work. And then let's go into the downloaded channeled message or how this came through as a system.
I had a very difficult childhood. My parents just really sort of ignored me from age 5, 6 forward. They got divorced. My father left when I was 6. My mother didn't really want to be a parent. My father went and started a new family. And so I was sort of left to my own devices to raise myself. And I really learned to rely on an inner voice that I think we all have. In fact, I know we all have this. And instead of tuning it out and listening to other teachers and other people, I really just continually chose to go back inward. So much so that by the time I was 14, I understood my mother's mental illness far better than she seemed to. I understood that the awful things that she said and did to me were more about her than me. I understood that I was worthy of life and of being here. And interestingly, I understood that even though we were living in poverty, that I was capable of pulling myself out of that. Even though I wasn't a good student, I was dyslexic. Louisiana public schools weren't even capable of handling that back when I was in school. And I was always told that I was smart but lazy. And so I did not do well in school. So really, I didn't have the cards stacked in my favor in terms of parents that were really involved, education, or any of those things. But still, I understood that I created my reality in my mind and that what was happening around me was the fleshed out version of what I was creating. So by the time I was in high school, I looked like one of the rich kids in school, wearing fancy clothes and driving a brand new car and running around with kids that drove BMWs and things like that, even though we were deeply in poverty. So I understood manifestation. And when you grow up poor, you think that money and material things are the answer to everything. And I really doubled down on that. And I spent the entire decades of my 20s and 30s manifesting money and material things. And I did that very, very well. And then I hit 40, 41, that midlife point, and looked around and noticed that all of these wonderful things that I had in my life weren't really making me happy. There were a lot of other areas that just weren't working. And that's when I decided to really start going inward again. And I had in 2010 what we now call a Kundalini awakening. I had no idea what that was when it happened. I meditated for a while. I started going inward more in a more formal way. And I had this eruption of energy happen at the base of my spine that sort of electrified me all over. It still flows to this day. And when I tap into that, I get such great clarity on how the world works, what makes every human being tick, how the universe works. And I kept that to myself all the way through my 40s, even to the point where I was embarrassed by it. It was something that I didn't want to be a spiritual person. Spirituality never spoke to me. I had long since given up religion. I just kept going inward. I wasn't listening to other teachers at all, really, until I stumbled upon Abraham Hicks. I think I saw something on Oprah one day, and there was something on there about The Secret. And I really kind of got into that for a minute. I'm like, yes, this has a name. This thing that I thought I invented when I was 14 that you create with your name and identity. And so I really got into studying it from that point, stumbled onto Abraham. And I had years prior to that seen a psychic who told me that I was a spiritual channel and that she handed me this Abraham Hicks material. I said, this is weird. I want no part of this. I don't believe I'm, some dead thing is talking to me. No, I don't want any part of that. There was something about Esther Hicks' sharing of Abraham that really lit me up. It just didn't seem weird to me. It sounded like home. It sounded like exactly what I was tapping into. And I thought, finally, I found someone who's doing what I do that understands me. So I really dove into all of that through the decade of my 40s. And it was great at first. And then I got to a point with it where I'm like, okay, this is wonderful, but we're still in this space of how do I manifest stuff? And there's a lot more to this than what I'm seeing here. Then I started trying to dip my toe into spirituality, and a whole lot of it is this love and light, new earth. We're all going to come together and be perfect and agree all the time about everything. And it's so wonderful. And then I started meeting these people that were, I'm a star seed and I'm special. And everything that I got from going inward is everybody has this. I'm not special. This is something that we all have access to. I was just fortunate enough as a child to continue to listen to it and tap back into it as an adult. I realized that I was teaching it in my corporate job for years, and it was about being successful by making other people successful. And then I got to the point in my evolution where I understood high-low vibration. I understood that this idea of just being in high vibration all the time is not really obtainable, and low vibration exists for a reason. And so I went really deep into that. At the end of my 40s, I quit my corporate job. I had no idea how I was going to share this with the world, but I started my own podcast. Back then it was called The Stream of David. Now it's the Taya Podcast. And I started teaching a course just to pay the bills. Hey, I know this thing. I'm going to teach you this thing. That course morphed into a full-blown practice. I realized that I had created this practice for myself, but for me to teach it to other people, I needed to make it a process. And then that has just taken on a life of its own. And now we have the Taya process, which is exactly what I'm talking about.
The practice itself and teaching and creating it into form, I think, is really impressive. And I kind of want to just riff on that for a second, because everything you're sharing is very similar to my journey. And I do find that the more we just block out everything else and we do listen to ourselves, the more we understand ourselves, the more gifts or whatever people like to call them, you just understand the nature of yourself, which you are the universe, and then you understand others, and then you get this flow of consciousness that is you authentically, whether people say it's a starseed being or whatever, the whole channeling thing. Because I'm a channel too. We all are, like you said. I love that. And that's one thing that's been really challenging for me, because some people along their journey, there is a part of the journey that awareness of your consciousness believes that there's a hierarchy, that someone else out there will have the spiritual gifts and you don't. And a lot of people do go through that because that's the teachers that they're around. And maybe they're not ready to hear authentic stream of more, I don't want to say truth, because you can't really say what's ultimate truth. We all create it, I think. So it's interesting what you're saying. So my journey, of course, like Mind Body Detox is a program as well that I created, but I'm really curious about the process of creating it into structure, because what I've done with my process as well is done that. But it's interesting because it's almost like on some level I'm curious of what your perspective is. I'm holding a road sign that's the arrows pointing in this direction. Here's methods, here's techniques to do it. But when someone gets on the bicycle or gets in the car, it still is very unique and individualized to each of them, which is the reality of it, because we want to put things in boxes. So I'm curious about your process and method of getting it, whether it's just channel it for you, of getting these hierarchical concepts and putting them into boxes, which it's like a square peg in a round hole, because it doesn't necessarily, it works, but it's not the true nature of the divine. So I'm really curious about your process with that.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you make, because I look at everything as a practice. And if people ask me what Taya is, the bottom line of Taya, the elevator pitch, it's emotional intelligence. And if you want to go further into that, we achieve emotional intelligence by finding appreciation of all things. What does appreciation mean? Oh my gosh, I can't appreciate XYZ. Appreciation is deep understanding. Such deep understanding that you no longer need to fear or judge anything. So when you see something that triggers you, something that's not your preference, and of course, our ego exists to discern preferences. We're doing it all the time, whether we even realize it or not. So there's nothing wrong with having a preference. There's nothing wrong at all with saying that isn't my preference. We have to do that just to survive. But to look at something and say, that shouldn't exist, that's when we separate ourselves from source consciousness. Because like you said, we're all channels. We all have source in us. I'm a big believer in duality. I see duality in everything. There is a positive aspect and negative aspect, if you want to call it that, to everything. And we see lots of duality in the polarized politics of today and all of these things. The duality of our being is that we're one part source and we're one part ego or humanity, whatever you want to call that. And the human part is here to have an experience, discern preferences, and move through a journey, whatever that looks like. And the source part is that power of well-being. And I look to nature. I saw in your bio that you like science, and we've brought science into this. We've brought psychology into this. We even brought positive elements of religion into it. I used to really say, oh, we're not a religion or a cult. The positive aspects of those things is community, practice, repetitiveness, because we live in a matrix all the time that is continually challenging us, saying, here's something to fear. Your credit score, your retirement, your aging, your health, all of these things. Here's something to fear all the time, something to judge all the time. And a lot of humanity right now is running on a heavy dose of should not be. All of these things shouldn't exist, shouldn't be. Source is not part of that. When we label something as should not be, we are cutting ourselves off from that well-being of source consciousness.
Yeah.
And the Matrix is just a collective human consciousness. It's not a sci-fi movie, but that's not what I'm referring to. And we have this matrix that seems to operate opposite of universal law. Universal law is you create with your consciousness. Even scientists say that, quantum physics, our consciousness creates. And I've also noted, and a lot of law of attraction teachings don't get into this at all, that we are moving through a vibrational flow all the time, meaning that our vibe is not static. It's up and it's down. And a lot of spiritual teachings, and especially a lot of law of attraction teachings, they kind of stop at just raise your vibe. Just raise your vibe. That's all you got to do is raise your vibe. Like I said, one, that's not possible to raise your vibe all the time. Yes, you can generally raise your vibe and your life will generally get better. And we're all about that. But you're still going to dip. You're still going to have your days that you're lower than other days. You're still going to have what I call a full-blown spin out, where you get so into your practice and it starts working and then you think you don't need to do it anymore, whatever that is. And what do? We spin out. We spin out of our health regime. We spin out of our meditation practice. We spin out naturally. I'm a fairly disciplined person, but there's things that I absolutely spin out of. And I have learned to really enjoy the spin out, because spin outs and low vibration have value. And what we do with Taya is we really focus on the value of that. So to kind of get back around to your question, the way that we create this as a practice without it turning into a religion or a cult or something of that nature is we created 4 pillars that we operate our lives on. And those pillars are appreciation, source, polarity, and intention. And I did that because I don't want Taya to ever be anything other than those 4 things. I've come to understand that when I am practicing appreciation as a default, something triggers me. Okay, instantly, how can I appreciate this? How can I zoom out to a higher perspective of non-judgment, understand what it is? And I developed that. And we all do this to a point naturally, but we can apply it to every aspect of life. When my mother was telling me, you're useless, I wish you were never born, I wish you would just kill yourself, she would say things like that to me when I was a teenager. I had a turning point, age 14, where I started seeing her as, okay, this is about her and her belief system, and I don't have to absorb this. And this is a vibrational journey that she's on. I didn't call it that, but I just really got that. And I'm going to appreciate her. I'm going to appreciate that this is just who my mother is and how she is. I did not speak to her for the last 20 years of her life, and that was her choice. So having that appreciation, even from a distance, detuned any power that situation would have over me. And it wasn't something that I just carried through life. I could just appreciate my mother and not say, oh, my mother was terrible. I was so shortchanged and you have this wonderful mother and woe is me. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And so I realized early on that this detuning is very powerful and we can apply it to everything. And the more we do it as a practice, the more that becomes our vibe and the more we're able to just view every aspect of ourselves and all of humanity, all of life in appreciation, deep understanding instead of fear and judgment. And it doesn't have to mean preference.
Yeah.
You know, there are certainly things that aren't my preference. I have a preference for no war. I have a preference for no genocide or racism or people starving to death in poverty. Of course I do. But I've come to understand conscious creation enough to realize that when we're viewing something and demonizing it, we're giving it power.
Yeah.
Collectively, we're giving it power. And the things that we demonize get bigger. And we see evidence of that everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. That is so absolutely true. So the question I have then is, well, actually, I wanted to speak to what you said about these low vibrations. And I feel like the appreciation aspect of what you have in the Taya practice is really beautiful, because I think that for some of my journey, it was playing around with the manifestation aspect and law of attraction and learning from the process. And I had this awareness in my head for years when I was much younger, that when I'm in the flow, things are going really well. I'm seeing all these things happening. And I had this awareness that when I'm perfectly aligned, that's only when things are going to happen for me, which is totally not true. So I'm curious of how that relates to the Taya practice. Like, for example, I was in a little low spot a couple days ago, and I just thought, man, I know why this person is in my life right now. This is so hard. I'm really glad because I'm ready to move through this. My nervous system needed this experience. And then, you know what? Thank you. And then just like clockwork, yeah, I had my eyes were puffy. I was crying and I had a little bit of a rough morning. Went out to lunch that day and I had met a very synchronistic person that was just like, wow, this is exactly what was supposed to happen right now. I'm really grateful for moving through that energy of the grief and the challenge. So I'm curious how that relates to the Taya practice, if that fits in at all with what I just expressed there.
Absolutely, it does. We definitely focus on not just high vibration, but low. Now, we are not striving for a 50-50 of that. We are striving to clean up what I like to call our vibrational basement, all of the stuff in our subconscious mind that is limiting, fear-based, anything that triggers us. And part of the cleaning process of that vibrational basement, your subconscious, is just being aware of what's there. And a lot of times we do just naturally bypass, not because we necessarily want to be the spiritual flower person that's just meditating all day and never turning on the news because they're triggered by it, but we're in get it done mode. Life is busy. We have so many tools at our disposal. And gosh, now with AI and Chat GPT, you think it makes life easier. I'm actually using my phone more because of that. I'm finding that every time we have this new thing that's supposed to be a convenience and make us more efficient, we just step up our game and how we utilize it, and we're just as busy. I'm at peace with that personally, but the distractions from your true vibrational journey are everywhere. And it's very easy to not realize how low your vibration really is because you're just so busy in get it done mode. But then if you look at your life and say, okay, this is what's working and this is what isn't working, well, that's a really good reflection of your foundational belief system and what's going on in your subconscious mind all the time. So where if you're not living the way that you really want to live, that's because of your belief system. Whatever's not showing up, it's rooted in your belief system, and claiming ownership of that without judging yourself for it is highly effective. But then understanding that low vibration exists to reveal to us what's in the basement.
Yeah.
What might you want to look at? What might you want to work on? And it exists topically and in general. So if we're creating a new company, for example. I used to really follow Apple, the company Apple. I was very fascinated by Steve Jobs and the creation of Apple, and how many times Apple almost went out of business. And you hear that, all of the trials and tribulations until something really gets into a vibe of success and really starts humming. All of the times that they were almost gone, almost out of business, or the CEO was kicked out of the company, those challenging times allow us to make a choice in duality. We either quit and move on to something else, which is a choice, or we say, hey, what's being revealed down here in this lower vibrational space that I might want to look at? i.e., how do I create a better product? How do I make what I'm trying to create, whatever it is, a better version of itself in creation? Because as you touched on earlier, we're here to create. We're here to expand consciousness, and creation is how we expand consciousness. Yes, there's a lot of material creation, but just new thoughts and ideas and new technology and all of the things that we're doing as human beings, our souls are expressing expansion through creation. So we're creating on autopilot all the time. Even if we say, I'm going to go sit on the sofa and stare at the television all day with a bag of chips and do nothing, we're creating decline. Our body's going to start revealing what we're not doing, and then we're going to create a health crisis, and then we're going to have that experience. So from the source perspective, all creation is expansion of consciousness. Therefore, everything is positive, everything is good, everything is growth. But we live in a matrix that wants us to behave and wants to say being a drug addict, bad, being a productive employee, good, being a good student is where you want to be. You don't want to flunk out of school. You don't want to, develop an addiction and end up living on the street somewhere. But that's all human created ideas of what life is supposed to be. Because I hearken back to, okay, well, what was life like before industrialization, before communities even? We were out in the wilderness, part of the food chain, just trying to survive. We are still that. Yeah. We just have a lot of bells and whistles that we've created, but we're still ego-driven beings. We want to live another day. We don't necessarily want to dominate. There's a fear behind all of that when we want to do that. But we do want to contribute. We do want to produce. We do want to do things. And the low vibration is always going to challenge any creation, and it's giving us an opportunity to make it a better creation. I always use the analogy of look at a forest and a tree standing in the forest. The oldest tree in the forest has weathered many storms, and the storms will come through, and the wind and the rain make that tree stronger if it doesn't kill it. It may even take off a few branches, but the tree is made stronger by the storm. Mm-hmm. But the storm is not all the time, right? Most of the time it's sunshine and peace, and here we are. And then a storm comes through. What does it do? It challenges the tree and allows it to be a better version of itself. That's creation. Mm-hmm. And that tree analogy works on every single topic that I'm aware of.
That's a key word that I've been working with is bandwidth and capacity over the last couple of years, especially with people who have a heart to say, I want to make a difference in the world. Spiritual and involved people, and even if they're not spiritual, just want to make a difference. And I think that the biggest limitation is bandwidth and capacity. And the only way I've ever seen any individual grow their capacity for stress, resilience, is through that pressure. And I think the avoidance of challenge, hiding in the light is what I say, doesn't create capacity to do great things. So I love the illustration of the tree. I think that's absolutely perfect. So I want to talk a little bit. Go ahead.
I have encountered a lot of people in the last decade or so since I've gotten into this business, a lot of spiritual people who mean well, but they are sort of staying on the surface and wanting to be in that love and light space only. And there's always a crash that comes. Yes. And I can really tap into somebody's energy. I think we can all do that. And I have met so many people that are speaking gratitude of all things. And I can tell there is a lot going on in their basement. I can feel it. Yeah. And it's not my business to change how they're believing, and everything has the power that you choose to give to it. So their belief system is that. If they want to learn Taya, they can come to me, but I'm not out pushing Taya mm-hmm. on people. Mm-hmm. So I think people have gone through that. And yes, we are all becoming wiser beings. Some people call that awakening. And I think that's really starting to wane now for people. And what's happening is people long ago got out of religion. A lot of people did. And then they got into new age spirituality, and then they got into law of attraction. And it's like this journey. Yeah. And that's not the end of the journey. The next step in the journey for all of us is understanding that, okay, yes, we create with our consciousness. It's wonderful to focus on the light. It's wonderful to take good care of your mind, body, spirit, as you say. But at the same time, let's not pretend that low vibe doesn't have value and that it doesn't exist, and that we're all going to flow through some version of it, and really lean into that and appreciate that as well.
Yeah. For someone who might be new, let's just pretend someone's like, okay, I've heard low vibe, high vibe, but has anyone really defined it? For some individuals defining it, I'd love to hear your definition of the experience of it in a practical example in your body. What does those things feel like for you, or in the Taya practice? How do you identify low vibe and high vibe?
Well, I think we all have nuanced ways of identifying it, but to me, a high vibe is energized and low vibe is less energy. And again, we're not supposed to be super energized all the time. Our bodies go and go and go, and then they need rest. So we go through vibrational flow, sleep and wake every single day, most of us. So that is a way to experience it. Understand that the energy that's flowing, that we're all plugged into, the polarized energy of the world, if not the entire universe, is not static. It's moving between high and low, high energy, expansive times, and then low energy times where things sort of collapse and become challenged. That low energy, we call it low vibe. It's not negative. It's not wrong. It's not something we should avoid. It exists, again, to reveal opportunities for expansion. And so what happens is that something gets created in low vibe, that it creates a storm. The storm comes through. We can allow the storm to do us in physically. I don't think the source being is ever done, but the physical being certainly has a beginning, middle, and an end. There's no proof otherwise. Everything has a beginning, middle, and end physical. So it can end our physical journey, or it can make our physical journey expanded. And it makes it expanded no matter what. Even if something comes through and challenges me and I decide I'm going to become a heroin addict and I'm going to end up on the street somewhere, you're having your experience. This is something that your soul, your strand of consciousness has not done before, maybe. And here it is. The matrix tells you shouldn't be this, but that's just the matrix.
Yeah.
Because you're not producing for society, and the matrix wants us to be productive, obedient beings. And it's okay that it does, but just really recognizing, wow, all of this is a human construct. The concept of gender and race and nationality, all of these things that put us in our place and put us on a template of what we're supposed to be, it's okay that those things exist. They have value. That's created a lot of positive things. It's also created a lot of division and war, and a lot of people have died at that idea. So understanding that low vibration exists to inspire new creation, and that all creation happens in these loops. And we see these loops in our lives. We see them in society. History repeats itself. We see the same people showing up again and again and again in different forms in our lives that trigger us in some way, that create some sort of an unwanted experience. And then one day we wake up and realize, wow, that person is a reflection of something that happened way back there, usually early childhood, very often mom or dad or both, because they're our original teachers. Now I can look at that in appreciation, and gaining appreciation for this person that's in my face right now is going to help me go back and gain a new perspective of what happened back there. And that is the work that I would guide anybody to do, not ignoring. And that was one of the things some of the teachers out there are like, oh, just focus on what you want. Don't think about the past. Only think about the future. In terms of conscious creation, that's not great advice, but it's true that if you can do that, that's great. I have yet to meet anybody, though, that just stays parked in the I'm a billionaire, I'm got the most ripped body, I defy aging, I'm happy all the time, and that's my vibe. That person doesn't exist. There may be that person on Instagram, but I know some of those people that have that Instagram, and I can tell you their personal lives are not that. We're all messy at times. It is. I'm like, hey, here's my imperfections.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to the 7 years of my podcast, every spin out, every stupid thing I've done in my 50s, I've been in my 50s the whole time I've had this podcast. I'm still saying, hey, my life is generally really good, but here's where it's not. And here's what that's showing me. And here's how I'm working with that.
Yeah.
And that's what we do is we really lean into the low vibration, lean into that basement clearing of, I don't need to clear everything in here at once, but as things reveal themselves, I want to take that box, I'm going to open it up, look inside it, shine the light in. What's going on in here? Let me unpack this, to the point where now in my practice, and for people that are more advanced in the Taya practice, we do this thing called firewalking. And it's not about walking on hot coals. I'll let Tony Robbins keep that one. But it's about sitting and mentally allowing yourself to walk through your greatest fears as if they're actually happening, not in fear of creating them, because conscious creation isn't that effective, but sitting and allowing myself, anything that is creating an ongoing fear for me or a trigger for me, I'm going to catch myself and realize, wow, there's a belief there that isn't serving me that I might want to look at. And I will, and it doesn't happen very often, but when it does arise for me, I will sit in meditation, in an active meditation, where I am experiencing my greatest fear and I'm moving through it. And maybe I survive it and maybe I don't. But our lives are all going to end. Mm-hmm. So why allow something of that nature to be your biggest fear, or being homeless, or being shunned by society, or being really sick, or whatever it is? Why not sit down and detune that by experiencing it and realizing that, why am I so afraid of? Why am I allowing the fear of something that hasn't happened yet in the future to affect my vibrational state of being right now? I may be in low vibrational flow, but how I'm responding to that is completely my creation. And Taya is all about how we're not going to solve polarity or vibrational flow. We're not going to solve that. That creates the universe. It expands everything. And the challenge, the quote unquote low vibrational challenge, very often is the catalyst to new creation and expansion.
Yeah.
So if that's how the universe works and that's how life works, then why don't I practice something that works in harmony with all of that, instead of what the Matrix teaches me, which is an opposition of it? Teaches fear, teaches judgment, teaches, you're not allowed to appreciate Trump. That's a big hot topic right now. Sorry to bring that up on your podcast.
No,
a lot of people, some people really appreciate him. Other people are saying, no, you can't appreciate any aspect. Total terrible human being.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to stop him from being him and being in power. That's a great example of whether you love him or hate him. I'm not judging that one way or the other. I have people on both sides of it that are friends. But noticing that the demonization of any topic or any person doesn't stop them. The solving power is in, let's understand this from a higher perspective, where we're not feeding it energy. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as negative or positive, right? It's just energy with our focus. And when you are hating something or really judging or fearing something, that's pretty heavy, intense energy.
Even just experientially, when you're in a room with a person and they're really angry at you, or versus loving you up and joyfully hugging you, that's an intense magnitude of energy. So I just want to give that example. And I really do like that you brought that up as a point with Trump, because I think that one of the things that I find interesting is holding lightly the ego identity that I am, and knowing that it serves a purpose, and that you're emphasizing that we're not going to heal it. It's not going to go away. We're not going to make it better. It's the interest I have is there is the matrix, I guess we would talk that your term here for when people are maybe in a space of pessimism or cynicism or skepticism, or completely shut down to these ideas of law of attraction. And that's really interesting to me, because it's a choice, right? The choice to not believe or not take a potential trying it or exploring. But I think that attachment to the identity, to the matrix form, to whatever they believe is real that they've been taught, is what is really fascinating to me, because that's when it's very hard to talk about certain things and say, on one hand, this is really tragic that this is happening, and I don't agree with this. My preference is for not to have this happen, but I don't have to villainize this person. Because on the other hand, do you see what interesting challenges and changes are happening collectively because of people rising up about this, like people coming together because they're disagreeing? And again, that's still more polarization, but it's still creating movement in the collective, in changes of people creating different choices, and things are really rippling out. So how do you, in your practice, help people to walk between the lines of being fully human, not bypassing their human emotions of preference, of anger towards someone, because yes, there's going to be the polarized feelings that will still come up as triggers to work through. And how do you help them to hold that, but also hold this detachment of, maybe there is something that this is a purpose that we don't even know what it's for yet. Because that's something where people get so angry, like
Mhm.
viciously angry about there's no purpose for human trafficking. And it is not my preference. I do not want that to happen in the world. And it is a mission for many people to eradicate it. And people are called and they're being led to create these changes and shifts in that area, in that arena. And is that my work? No, my work is to contribute it financially and donate to the causes. I find that a big topic that's been very challenging to talk about in the spiritual world and even the regular world, because you even have those bypassing people that there's such a strong magnitude of polarization around that's not real versus what if this is. So I'd be curious how you traverse that in your practice with your community or even yourself.
That's a really good point that you bring up, because I lead with that a lot just to get attention into what I want to talk about. Let's dive right into the thing that most people gloss over, because there's a lot of spiritual fluff out there these days. And it's good that we're evolving our thinking beyond religion to new age. And again, it's a journey, and I get that, and into conscious creation. And a lot of people are. But a lot of people will stop and build a wall and still have their whole list of things that shouldn't exist on the other side of the wall. And what I say to that is, I am completely fine with anybody having preference. I touched on that earlier. We all have preference. But understanding how creation occurs, I understand that all of those things on the other side of that wall of should not be exist. They're here. They're happening. So what's the solving, healing energy that I can send to that? It's a deeper understanding about what all of that is about. I certainly had things happen to me as a child that most people would say was wrong and shouldn't have happened, were awful and terrible, and nobody should experience that. I today don't judge any of those things. All of the things that happened to me as a child was just part of my journey. And did I make it out of it? Yes. Do a lot of people not? Of course. But creation does happen on a spectrum.
Yeah.
And what happens in today's world is we fail to notice very often that most of us are not living in a storm. Most of us are the tree soaking in the sunshine and the rain and thriving and supporting other life. And most of us are some version of that. Most of humanity is. There's a small percentage of humanity that is not. And there is a suffering experience that can be solved. We don't solve that, however, by just demonizing it and stopping there. If you have a conversation about this, what about the traffickers? Why are they doing that? Probably for money. Well, there's an end result where it's going to benefit somebody that's thinking they're getting something out of this situation, or it wouldn't be occurring. Let's understand them on a deeper level so that we can sort of dissect what it's all about. When I say appreciation, I always mean deeper understanding, not preference.
Yeah.
Appreciation is a tricky word. We don't have an English word for this. There are some ancient Eastern words for appreciation of all things. How interesting is it that the English language does not contain a succinct word that really means appreciation of all things without the preference part coming into play? Appreciation means deep understanding, the way that I use it. So I'm seeking to, instead of judging and fearing, let me understand this whole topic on a deeper level. What's putting everyone into play? Who's the consumer? Who's the trafficker? Who's the victim? Let me understand all of that. How did you get into this space? Were you born into a scenario where you were just so on your own that you were subject to this sort of thing, or what? I could have been that if, grown up in a separate situation. I could have easily been that. So understanding from a higher perspective of non-judgment in my belief system is healing power and solving power. But collectively, we build the wall and we say, no, all evil. Don't want to hear about it. If you're a pedophile, you're just evil and that's it. That's all you are. Okay. But how are we solving that by just stopping there and saying, this is evil? It's kind of like what Christianity does with demonizing, right? Coming up with this concept of, well, it's demonic and it's evil. Okay, that's true. But that person that's doing that thing is not just that and was not always that. No little infant is born saying, I'm going to abuse children as soon as I can. That just doesn't work that way. It's part of their makeup and their belief system that they flow into somehow. But nobody talks about that. All we talk about is the easy part of demonizing it, being the keyboard warrior, saying how horrible it is, and then going and having lunch and forgetting all about it. That's not solving or changing anything. I really want to solve things. So let's solve things by having a deeper understanding of them, what makes them tick, what's the motivation, what's placing the victim in this space, what's placing the trafficker. Because I promise you, if you got in the mind of that trafficker is somehow justifying what they're doing in their mind to be able to do it. Oh, I'm just, offering a service. I need to make money. This is how the world works. Maybe they were abused as a child. And hey, this is just how it is. Conversations.
No. Yeah.
And here we are in 2025 with all of this technology, and we still don't go there.
I think that's changing because it's for many years, this way of being, the self-awareness journey creates this systems level thinking of how everything's connected. And that's, neurodivergent kind of brain thing that's not typical. And that is what we're seeing shift because we need that. We can't go back away from that, how things are all interconnected. And I do think that there's a lot of people that are, well, I guess, chosen suffering or challenge or chaos or fear that people do feel imprisoned by or victimized by with, the current, what they believe is the disempowering forces, whether it's the administration or it's, whatever end of the spectrum people are on. I do feel that the biggest teacher for understanding, they said deep appreciation is understanding the curiosity of how complex things are and like seeing it from that perspective is what brings me peace, but also some solutions. And it always comes back to raising consciousness. Mm-hmm. It always comes back to expanding consciousness.
Source is the source of all creation, right? And when source is flowing, the answers are there for everything.
Yeah.
But as long as we're demonizing something, you're cutting source out of the equation.
Yes.
And I always say, start in your own life with your own stuff.
Yes.
Whatever you got going on, and then let that radiate out to humanity. Because if you start with the worst part of humanity, you're probably setting yourself up for failure because you're not cleaning up your own house. Start with yourself, which will benefit you. And it's okay because you have more to offer the world, when you can manage your vibration more effectively anyway. Mm-hmm. Then start contributing to the collective in the conversation of, I apply this in my life. I see how it works in my life. So therefore I really believe it and trust it. By the way, TIA stands for trust your abundance, because I realize it really comes down to trusting the universe, trusting well-being, trusting that even when you're out in the wilderness that you're going to find your way back. Yeah. Because I've found throughout my lifetime, getting to that edge of that cliff and taking that next step and trusting, I always land. I always do. Yeah. And I'm 57 now and it still works. So it has yet to fail me. Yeah. So that's why I really teach trust. Trust that it's going to work out. Trust that if we simply appreciate it the way source does, understand it deeply, shine that light of source, allow that light to come back, that is high vibration. And when we're bringing that into a topic, things tend to solve and heal themselves almost automatically, or all of the things that we need to do that just show up for us. But when we're fearing and judging and worrying and, oh, what could go wrong, then we're cutting ourselves off from that energy. And whatever we are experiencing is going to be prolonged now because we're doing it.
Yeah.
The call is always coming from inside the house. We're the ones creating it.
Yeah. The universe is a really interesting self-balancing mechanism too, that from chaos comes harmony, and from harmony over time comes chaos. And I find it really interesting that what you said about start with yourself, it's so important because we do have this projection of everything else needs to get fixed. And then we avoid the actual part of ourselves that has the power to create. But I find that the more, if I meet someone and I can determine or discern their point in expansion of their consciousness, that determining factor for me is how scared are they of dark things? Because that was one of my things really early on. I was so scared of so many things. And I said, especially being a medium, during those early years of not knowing how to control my sensitivity, it was a lot of dark things, and that some people in the spiritual path call entities and demons and things that they still create polarization around. Oh my gosh, I just had 2 days ago, a client came in and she says, I have entities, they're attached to my daughter. And it's like this whole, like, okay, this person on their spiritual journey, that's their perspective. I'm not here to change what she believes, but I'm here to give her a different perspective if she takes or leaves it, because that's just a perspective and it's not necessarily the ultimate truth. And it's scary for people. And I said, I can tell how far along they are by how much those things don't impact them. Because my journey was, I want to stand in the presence of a demonic force and not be fazed. And that still, like, now,
And isn't that a wonderful experience on the other side of it?
yeah,
When
it's
you do
like,
that? That's firewalking. That's what I was talking about earlier.
yes, yeah, it's that's the power. Like, then nothing, you are totally, the universe is still flowing through you. You understand that it is also you, and that's really hard for a polarized consciousness to understand. And that's where I think I love that what you brought up today. You're talking about that, and that the ego in itself is what creates these stories and these characters that we like to put in roles of good or bad. And it's the play of forms, and it still has a purpose. So I think it's holding it, but not moving into toxic positivity where we're bypassing and saying, oh, well, I'm not really angry. I don't really hate. I don't have these feelings. That those are there. They're going to be there. I just love that part of what you're offering. So I'd love to hear more about how we can get in touch with you and how this process for working with you work. Like, what does it look like moving into working with you in the Taya practice and your community? I'd love to hear more about that. And do you still do your podcast?
The podcast is the Taya podcast, the TYA podcast. And it's been out for 7 years. It used to be called The Stream of David. Now we've renamed it Taya. I've just decided, instead of focusing so much on the channeling, I still channel every time I teach. We know what that is. What are we doing with it? There's lots of, everyone's channeling, and there's lots of people out there publicly channeling now. What we're doing with it, in my case, is the Taya practice, the TYA practice. So we have the podcast. I have a book, an audio book, the Taya practice, on Amazon. And the best place to get started is TayaAcademy.com, TYAAcademy.com. We have a learning hub. It's free. We have free Sunday live Zoom gatherings that people can join. We teach this all the time. And of course, we have academy learning, level learning, and things like that as well. But the best place to get into it is to start with the audiobook, the podcast, or joining the community.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to meet you. Like, it's just beautiful to continue to use this amazing technology to connect across time and space, to link up these really cool ideas and practices. And thank you for doing the work yourself and continuing to create together this incredible world we're creating.
Thank you for having me. I really liked a lot of the things that you had to say. And I especially love when you're talking about how chaos creates harmony and harmony creates chaos. That's these loops of creation. And I just love meeting somebody that really gets that.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's like birthing. I think of it as contraction and expansion. Then there it goes. And that's also how I see it, like that painful moment before you're letting something go or detoxing. So before we go, I do have 2 final questions that I always ask my first-time guests on the show. And the first one is, what's your favorite wellness product or self-care technique? Something that like really is filling your cup up right now.
I'm not going to plug my practice again for that. I will tell you that my favorite thing that I do now is this grounding / sun gazing, where I spend a lot of time in here in the studio and I love what I do. But beyond just my meditation in the morning, I do go outside and get my feet in the ground, and I look in the direction of the sunrise, not right into the sun midday or anything like that. And as the sun comes up, I am staring into the light of it as it comes up, and just in that quiet space of meditation. I heard this somewhere a while ago. I said, I'm going to incorporate this in my morning routine where I just do this. And it's reconnecting me to nature in a way that I don't do a whole lot of, because I spend so much time in here creating and doing all of this that I love so much. But I'm doing that, and I'm finding that I'm feeling better. I'm sleeping better. I'm managing my day better, even above and beyond just my normal practice. That is something that I'm layering on now, that I'm giving power to, at least. And it really seems to be something that's just like a whole other level of experience when you just sort of get yourself back to nature for just a moment, kind of the way we were for millions of years before we had structures, putting yourself back in that space, because I believe our physical vehicles are programmed for that. and we're sort of cutting ourselves off from it, and bringing a little bit of that back in is very powerful.
I'm loving that you're connecting more. And it's one of the things I'll share that's really interesting. The more that I've gotten even more in touch with nature or more in touch with my body, that seems to be a really interesting part of the journey for creation and manifestation. It's just really interesting. It's a different vibe, totally different vibe. Again, there's like energy is always shifting and changing within our bodies and how we create, manifest. So it's just really, really cool, because I know for my journey, it just shifted things in a really big way. So the other question I have is, if you could detox one thing in the world or your life right now, what would it be?
The concept of they, them, not in the terms of someone's chosen pronouns, but the concept of it's their fault. They're the reason you're not thriving. Those people over there. I think if there's one massive problem that humanity is completely capable of solving with all of this technology, is coming. And right now we're in this deeply polarized phase that is causing a lot of people to wake up out of it, realizing that, gosh, the talking heads on my television or social media are telling me to hate these other people that aren't like me or don't believe like me. And I'm just tired of it. It's not doing anything for me. It's not working. It's not effective. Some will double down on that perhaps for life, but I think a lot of people are going to wake up out of that and realize that, okay, somebody telling me that the problems in my life and in the world belong to somebody else, and if we just eliminate those people, life is going to finally be better. And it never happens. And it gets really nasty in the process, as we all know. I don't think we're ever going to live in perfection. We're all going to have an ego. We're all going to want to do a little better than we have, or maybe even better than other people. And we're always going to be in the spectrum. But can we get to the place of intelligence where we're at least claiming ownership of our vibrational journey and our experience?
Yes.
I think we can.
Yes.
I think we can.
From that victim consciousness to empowerment consciousness. That's a huge, that would change absolutely everything. Because that is the track to becoming a co-creator or manifesting your world and understanding the power that you have instead of giving it away. Yeah. Cool. I love that. Thank you so much, David. This was great. I love talking with you, and I love the work that you're doing. And guys, please check out all of David's information and the podcast. It sounds amazing. 7 years is awesome. I've been doing this for 3. So I love that you're continuing on, and you have a great speaking voice, which is great. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. And everyone, in the show notes as well, we'll put more information about connecting in with the free community, the Sunday lives. That sounds amazing. But again, please continue to share this episode if this is supportive for you. We know there's so many people that need support and other perspectives in the world. So if this calls you to share, please feel free to share it. Thanks so much for joining us, David. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. If you love this podcast, share it with others and leave us a review. Your reviews help us more than you know and supports us continuing to make episodes and being heard from all over the world. You can also follow the link in our show notes to submit a topic that you would like to hear on the show.